Happy New Year and welcome to 2026. This is the time when many of us make New Year's resolutions. Maybe it's we want to lose a few pounds or go to the gym more or spend less time scrolling and more time with family and friends. I have a New Year's resolution, and that is to help you get better outcomes and build stronger relationships in your negotiations. So today, I'm going to share with you 3 tips for negotiation that I'm also adopting for my own negotiation related resolutions. If you stay to the end, I'm also going to share with you a special tip for those of you who negotiate over email or over text. So, tip number 1 is around the power of appreciation. Coming off the holidays, I was very lucky to have been invited to lots of parties and also to have gotten lots of gifts. And it's customary, hopefully, for most of us to offer some thanks when we receive a gift or maybe when we come home from a holiday party. It turns out that appreciation is actually a really important part of negotiation. That is to say that there is research that has shown that when people feel appreciated for their effort or for gestures they make, they are more likely to think creatively in a negotiation. They are more likely to build a stronger relationship and trust you. So Roger Fisher and Dan Shapiro in their book Beyond Reason actually identify appreciation as a core emotional interest. What does that look like, practically speaking, in a negotiation? It's simple and it's important. If somebody makes an offer of a concession, it's thanking them. It's if somebody takes some effort, for example, to bring some food or organize the Zoom to say thank you for doing that. This may seem relatively small, but the research shows that when you appreciate the other side, it actually builds their sense of trust in you, it builds confidence, and it gets them thinking more creatively. Part of the reason why appreciation works is it makes them feel like you are acting collaboratively rather than seeing your negotiation counterpart as an opponent. Okay, the second New Year's negotiation tip I want to give you that's also a resolution for me relates to framing and particularly being polite. So, in a 2019 study that looked at interactions when customers were asking for requests or favors, what it showed is that when a customer framed their request in the form of request or in the form of a want, they were more likely to actually get their goal achieved than when they framed that request as a demand or this is what I must have or you owe me. So practically speaking, what does this look like? It's saying something like, I would be ever grateful if you could, or I wonder if you might be willing to help me out here. Those kinds of phrasings are much better than you owe me, I demand, you have to. Let me give you a real life example from my own life. So a few weeks ago, I discovered that there had been an ongoing problem in my gym membership, such that the gym actually owed me about $250. Now, one way I could have negotiated this is to, in a huff and a puff, bang the table and say, you made a pretty serious error and you need to refund me $250. So instead of doing that, I actually went to the manager and I said, gosh, I noticed there's been an error in billing here, and I love your help in thinking about how we might be able to fix it. One way of doing this might be that you refund me $250 and I'd be happy with that. But if I think about it, a different way, which might actually be cheaper for you and more valuable to me, would be to give me a year's membership for free and reimburse me nothing. Totally up to you. I love your thoughts. Now, the reality is that a year's membership at my gym is about $450, and they only owe me $250. But of course, if you think about it, giving one person a free membership really costs this gym nothing, as opposed to issuing me a check for $250. The gym manager was thrilled with the suggestion, and I am going to have a free gym membership in 2026. The point here is that by framing this in ways that gave the manager some control and some autonomy and really invited that person to collaborate with me, I was actually able to create more value both for myself and frankly for the gym, which probably saved a fair amount of money by issuing a free membership and paying me nothing. So part of the reason why this framing of politeness and requests worked is that I was able to really think about what my interest was, which was really being treated fairly and not just get positional about the $250. And so that polite framing of request in combination with thinking about my interest instead of the position helped really create some value here. And I think this is an important lesson to take into 2026, particularly in a moment where we hear many people on the international arena making claims for demands or take it or leave it. Research shows that's just not an effective negotiation strategy. Okay, so I'm about to give you tip 3, but stay to the end because afterwards I'm going to then share with you a tip that will be really meaningful if you negotiate over email or text. So, tip 3 is appreciate and understand the power of small talk in negotiation. You know, coming after the holidays, there's a tendency we go back to work, we feel overwhelmed, we want to get a lot done to dig out from under, and we miss this really important skill in negotiation that has a lot of research backing it up, which is the way that small talk can actually help create better negotiation outcomes and stronger relationships. So when I say small talk, what I mean by that is some efforts at the beginning of a negotiation to build some connection or rapport before getting immediately into the substance. Now, let me give you some more nuance around what I mean by small talk and what I don't mean, because empty small talk can actually backfire. In order to be effective, small talk has to be sincere and it has to be contextually appropriate. Let me give you an example involving 2 different colleagues of mine, one of whom I think is extremely effective and the other as less so. So one of my dearest friends has this incredible capacity to remember minute details about different individuals. And so when he sees that individual, he's able to say something like, "Hey, Mike, how is your son doing in soccer?" Or, "Ginger, has your mother been feeling better since her recent surgery?" That kind of small talk, which is tailored to the individual person, is extremely powerful in negotiation. So before we move on, let me offer some advice about what happens if you actually don't know that their mother recently had surgery or that their son is a big soccer lover. So first is there may be a little bit of research you can do, searching them on LinkedIn, asking others what they may know about this person. Even if you aren't able to do research on LinkedIn, sometimes you can come up with a question that really is just related to something about their company or their industry or maybe where they're from. But the idea really relates to preparation, trying to do a little bit of research about what their world is like and then finding something you can be curious about that feels like a sincere question is a really nice way to build some small talk, even if you don't know them. Contrast that with my other colleague who often just uses the same line, something like, "You're looking great," or "Your hair is very nice," or "What a great outfit." Now, they can be fine if it truly is a great outfit, or if you know that that person actually cares a lot about the way they dress. But when deployed kind of mindlessly, it looks insincere and can backfire. So small talk is the kind of move that not only does it make the other person feel better, but again, it creates that kind of trust building that leads to more collaboration and more creativity and that ability to get beyond positions, look at interests, and create value. One more important thing about small talk that research shows is quite important, and it's actually transitioning in as smooth a way as possible into business. In other words, abrupt transitions that feel as if the small talk was fake tend to actually backfire. So, really listening well and finding that moment when the transition into business is appropriate is a tip worth taking and has substantial payoffs in negotiation. Okay, and now for the last substantial payoff, the tip related to email or text negotiations. And it's really a variation on what I just said. That is, small talk actually matters in email and in text negotiations. So, in research by Janice Nadler, she has found that in email negotiations, where there's a bit of small talk before you get into business, parties are more likely to get value creating outcomes and to reach a deal. What do I mean by small talk in email or text? It's basically saying something like, Dear Oscar, I hope your holidays were great and that you're surviving the cold weather in Colorado, with regard to provisions on paragraph 3. So, yes, it is as simple as that. A sentence or two that just offers some well wishes, again, contextualizes something about the other person, makes a real difference. The research actually shows that the differences, both in terms of getting outcomes and getting value creating outcomes, are statistically significant when there is small talk at the beginning of an email or a text. One more note with respect to this: actually using the person's name, saying, Dear Oscar or Dear Alexa or Hi Oscar or Hi Alexa, makes a difference as opposed to just immediately going into whatever's happening. Okay, so these are my New Year's resolutions for myself with respect to negotiation, and I hope they might become yours as well. And so before I go, let me offer one more way for you to kick off the new year in the right way, and that's subscribe to this channel if you haven't and keep on watching. Thanks and see you next week. Want to be a better negotiator? Watch this next video.